SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Flutter Entertainment, global gambling's highest value PLC, has raised its year guidance by 1%, following exceptional results recorded for Q3 trading. Guidance is elevated despite Flutter warning markets of unfavourable US sporting results in October, which led US analysts to probe leadership on FanDuel's pricing and generosity. In the UK, as Rivals founder, Flutter brands continue to take market share, an element not underestimated by leadership. Meanwhile, edge pricing and product enhancements have been incorporated by Sisal Italia and BetMax Serbia platforms, as the international unit moves onto its next market makeover of SNAI and Bet Nacional to guarantee podium places in Italy and Brazil. As 2024 comes to a close, iGaming Daily dissects Flutter's evolution and how its portfolio is changing the competitive makeup of individual markets. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 marketing and CRM solutions for the global iGaming market. I'm Ted Menmuir, and joining me today we have Conor Porter, senior journalist of CasinoBeats. Conor, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Ted. Not too bad today. Usually when you are on this pod, we have another individual with us as well, in Martin Elliott, and we dubbed ourselves the Big Monday News team. Unfortunately, Martin isn't with us today to share this Big Monday News on a Thursday. So, yeah, hopefully he'll rejoin us soon for this podcast.
Well, for our audiences, the big news has now been moved to Thursday, but November just seems to be every day is a big news day in this industry. M&As, PLCs, yeah.
Yeah, certainly with all these Q3s coming through, looking like we're near the end of the period as now, and we've got a big one to tackle to conclude it all before we wish the financial period over and we enter into the new year, past the Christmas period into 2025 as well. So big one here, Ted, Flutter Entertainment.
Yep, Flutter, highest value PLC. So, with your kind of journalist hats on, how do you take on reporting on Flutter? Because it's no longer just an Anglophile business. It's moved on to the kind of new markets. And how have you kind of seen this transition since you've been at SBC?
Yeah, so I've been at SBC for a couple of years now, and Flutter has really grown and has really cemented itself as, you know, if you're going to talk about gambling operators across the globe, you have to talk about Flutter being in that top 3 for certain. And it's not looking like it's going to be moving out of that category anytime soon, especially with the angle that they're taking in Brazil. We already mentioned with Bet Nacional earlier on. We'll see how that progresses in 2025. But from what they said on the call as well yesterday in the earnings call, given a good market breakdown of everywhere that they are in the world, they do have a good set plan pushing forward as to how they want to progress this company into 2025 and into the future as well. But I guess it's a wait and see game as to how this evolves. But we're going to delve into a lot of these topics today on the podcast, Ted. I mean, what are your thoughts really on Flutter as we enter 2025 now, after this 2024 year coming to a close?
So for me, this is a company that it sets out its objectives and achieves them. And, we've seen in this year, it's the top ranking of global gambling PLCs. And that's against very kind of heavily exposed land-based gambling ventures in the US. And it just seems that every time these guys publish their quarter earnings, they put on kind of exceptional trading. As we're going to go through the numbers, we'll see that. But it's definitely a company that in every market that it enters, it seems to be targeting podiums and kind of reshaping the competitive makeup and making it tougher for its opposition. And it's got so many kind of tools in its armor. And even as you noted, it's getting kind of hard and hard to explain Flutter as an entity, because it just has so many dominant brands, right? And you've got to go and tackle them individually and tackle kind of each kind of the each market setup that they have. So I think it's good to go over the kind of Q3 numbers and say, look, this is where the company are at the moment, and this is their vision. So on to that. Conor, give me the top down of the Q3 results for Flutter, the headline revenues, EBITDA, and also the period, the period losses that it booked in.
Sure. So yeah, uptick in revenue and adjusted EBITDA in the third quarter of 2024. Whilst their net loss is still a loss, but it has improved. And Peter Jackson ultimately described the quarter as excellent overall. And as a result of that, with that progression throughout the year that we've seen so far with the Q3 too, and as you mentioned at the top, they've improved their guidance by 1% across revenue and adjusted EBITDA. So the numbers themselves up by 27% year over year in revenue to $3.25 billion, whilst average monthly players grew by 16% on the year to 12.9 million, excluding operations revenue up by 15% year over year to $2 billion. So you can kind of see how much of that revenue is coming from the US there. Net loss, as I mentioned, has improved, but still a loss, $114 million on the year, on the quarter, up by 56% year over year. But the company's saying that's driven by strong revenue growth, and as we mentioned, the acquisitions in Italy and in Brazil, that could progress even further entering into the new year, and we'll wait and see if that moves towards the net income rather than a loss. But we'll wait and see on that front. And then adjusted EBITDA, 74% improvement year on year in the quarter to $450 million. So yeah, looking good progression in across those fronts there, Ted, and stepping in the right direction. With Peter Jackson, the CEO, describing it as excellent overall. How would you perceive those numbers, Ted?
I think for me, what the numbers tell you is that, look, Flutter and its valuation of shareholders and its view from kind of investors is that it trades alone. So, you're talking about a company that can book in a quarter of 125 million losses, but at the same time, it just points to its revenue and EBITDA and says, look, long term, this isn't even a factor. And by the way, that 125 million loss is primarily attributed to like the Fox option, in which it needed to get out of that to accelerate its US earnings for FanDuel, which it is achieving, as you mentioned, because it's gone from, I think the swing was, it had a positive EBITDA swing of 58 million EBITDA. So that trajectory is now coming into play for Flutter in its US earnings. Again, a lot to cover, and the clear thing is like the distinction is, the US is still kind of the very fast growth element for Flutter, whilst it's still kind of taking up market share in non-US markets, but it's spending heavily in the US. And this, again, on the investor call, it was an area that really got probed by US analysts. What do you think they're trying to gauge at when they question kind of the generosity and the pricing of Flutter in the US?
I think they're just looking to get an understanding of the whole situation as to why Flutter and FanDuel are performing so well in comparison to other operators in the market that aren't doing so well. And they said it mainly down to their pricing on their parlays that are performing so well in the call itself. But also it just further cements onto FanDuel's position in the market being that number one leader, and they've been able to continue that progression, continue that positive swing in the right direction for FanDuel, as you're saying, maintaining its marketing spend and generosity throughout the remainder of the year. So it's looking good for FanDuel, and it could benefit even more throughout the remainder of the year because they've got this deal with Netflix coming up with the NFL games. You want to talk more about that? It's looking like it's going in the right direction, Ted.
I mean, to me, what screams out is I think kind of like even in the US now, analysts just believe that it's a two-player market between FanDuel and DraftKings, and I think like every question probed in the analyst call is, where are these two in terms of each other, and what is the differential there? And I think Peter Jackson kept on, really stirred by the pricing, and it gets called generosity in the States, which has an add-on. These customers are sending money. I mean, it's not they're coming in for free, right? But I think every move that FanDuel makes is priced against, or it's referenced against DraftKings. I think they're trying to kind of find out who's got the better edge on the parlays and on the kind of individual markets, especially for pro sports. Again, Peter Jackson, I think he must have answered like 12 questions directed on parlays, and he just, stood by the belief that it is a core dynamic for FanDuel. It believes that overall, like the popularity of parlays in the States, that it offers the best premiums on them. And it isn't afraid. He even admitted that in October they got stung by the parlay factor. But FanDuel are determined to keep their exposure in the market. I think the Netflix deal that's coming in is going to be observed pretty closely. And it's also a big deal for Netflix because they're making their Christmas play with NFL games in that roster. I mean, no, it's apparently they get kind of, the audience is the same level as the Super Bowl. So we'll find out how much FanDuel kind of paid to get kind of that extra promotion.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if it'll be on the same level as the Super Bowl, these Christmas games, but it'll be close. And, maybe they've seen what DraftKings has done with Amazon Prime for the Thursday night games and those kind of island games that they have in the US, which do get a lot of attention, do get a lot of audience. Maybe they've seen that and see a potential possibility to generate the same kind of outcome with Netflix. So that's kind of the direction I think they're going in that with FanDuel becoming the sportsbook betting partner for these games on Netflix later this year.
Yeah. But what I always find interesting about Flutter calls is that the difference between the questions asked between US analysts versus the European ones that tend to be a lot more conservative. Whilst the US ones are really kind of probing as where they're spending the money, what are kind of the mitigating factors for FanDuel and its growth. But on to the UK, and let's go to our home market, and it's another quarter and another squeeze on market share. And from your editorial perspective on CasinoBeats, what are Flutter brands getting right?
I think particularly in the UK, they've said that they're happy with the market share, that they're pleased with the market share that they've got. They've adapted well to they believe they're adapting well to the new regulations that are planning on to coming into the UK with the white paper. They've talked about the momentum in the UK market in terms of players, the average monthly players being up by 17%, product improvements, iGaming's cross-selling well from sportsbook. So, it's all interlinking well there in the UK market. And it benefited in part as well from the Euros that took place earlier in the year as well, with the majority of that spend to acquire players, having a rolling on and those players, retaining those players into the Q3 period. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture, I think, in terms of benefiting from the cross-selling from the sportsbook and also the gains that were made in the previous quarter as well. But also, Ted, as you know, we have to keep in mind as to what these new regulations that come through on the white paper, how that impacts Flutter and their brands, Sky Bet and Paddy Power in the UK moving forward. Yeah, true.
But, you're very right. It's funny because, when we often kind of report in the UK, there's quite kind of a demure kind of downturn as to what the kind of market looks like. But to have a quarter where you have double-digit growth at 29%, and you're indexing a beta about $350 million. I mean, your competitors would like tear off their arms to do that, to get those results. And it's, yes, the UK market is changing, but it's still a primary market for them. And it's still a market where they believe that they can get like long-term growth and long-term market share over key rivals. And again, that's such a kind of determining factor for their shareholder value. It's another, very, very good narrative for them to have.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Let's close out and look at the international unit, because there's a lot going on there in the markets of Italy. Especially with Sisal, and also kind of the key upgrades. Look, how is Flutter kind of transforming its international brands, and how is it kind of enhancing its overall product to market?
So yeah, you already mentioned it with the SNI acquisition earlier on. They mentioned during the earnings call that this is a brand that is very much well recognized with sports betting in the Italian market, whereas the Sisal brand, they said it complements that. So there may have been concerns that they would take market share from one another when it was acquired and things like that, but this was expressed on the call itself. Rob Coldrake, the CFO, said that they're not expecting to eat into one another, expecting it to complement one another. So they got that direction going in Italy and progressing there. And obviously the other big one is Brazil, and we don't know yet if they have been confirmed for the market. Obviously, it's still a ongoing situation in Brazil as we await for the launch of the regulated market next year. But within the call itself, Flutter expressed optimism and confidence that they believe that the market is going to launch on Jan 1st next year. We wait and see if that is the outcome itself, but with the Bet National acquisition as well, that's another market in which Flutter has confidence that they could potentially be a podium contender, or at least one of the top operators in that market. And with the history that they've got in other markets as well, they'll have that confidence entering Brazil, I believe. Ted, and what do you think?
All right, let me take you back to Italy. They're taking a big bet in Italy, and they're paying a premium on SNI. But at the same time, I mean, it's a market that, via the regulations that are coming into play, it's seeing kind of a huge transfer from retail to online. And I think it peaks at about $1 billion a year, the transfer. And again, the thing about Flutter here is that, their bet is big. So it's not just a case of like, oh, well, we're going to launch, a couple of new brands, or we do a couple of new sponsorships. No, they're going after one of the top tier operators. They're moving into SNI. SNI is, proven kind of top 3 in Italy. And even if it gets a makeover by Flutter Edge, it's still got the market dynamics there of it is in that kind of premium spot. Now, in Italy, we'll compete against Lottomatica for that golden, number 1 place. I think it's going to be a straight shootout between those two. But I think again, it's another market in which Flutter is kind of rearranging the terms of play. And it won't, I think it accepts that it's battle with Lottomatica, but I think it's going to get a lot tougher for its European PLCs below that. So it's, again, Italy, second biggest iGaming, second biggest gambling market in Europe. Again, Flutter going in there and transforming that market and reshaping it into what it wants, into how it wants to play in it. In Brazil, from the call, I think they are preparing for a January launch. I think that there was some frustrations there about how the communications that they're getting from the government and kind of certain uncertainties at present. I think one of the things that they're very aware is of the 100 brands launching at the same time. Well, apparently that's kind of minimizing at the moment. So I'm very much, I'm quite cautious to say anything on Brazil until the market launches. That's my take. So, Conor, PLC Q3s, they're slowly coming to an end. But let's reflect back on 2024 for Flutter. I mean, what has this business proved to the market? And what's your take regarding, well, the biggest company in our sector?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think throughout 2024, they've proven that they can be one of the, if not the top operators in the gambling market globally. You know, they've shown that emphasis, for numerous years now in the US and in the UK. And now they're looking to continue expanding their market share in other regions across the globe. We already, mentioned about Italy and the acquisition that they've had there in Brazil too. And they're just going to look to keep on building on that. But there will be challenges on the horizon. In Brazil, you mentioned about that. So much and wait and see situation there. And then in the UK too, with these regulatory changes to come through with the white paper. So there are certainly challenges on the horizon, which could cause some bumps along the road. But at the moment, this Flutter vehicle is cruising, and is very much on its way towards further cruising down that highway in 2025. So those are my thoughts. What do you think, Ted?
I fully agree with everything that you said, really. I think you covered it very well. It's going to take a lot to stop Flutter. And I think kind of the challenges they're going to have to kind of compete with them at a much more kind of localized level. One market I'll be keeping an eye on is the Brazilian one, because I think that is going to be kind of a fair ground for kind of all market competitors. So let's see. I mean, a lot can happen in a year, and maybe I don't think they're going to be taken off the top podium, but I think maybe we will see kind of one or two challenges rise up. Well, thanks for joining us, and this is Ted and Conor signing off for iGaming Daily. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.